your logic find this fascinating, Mr. Spock?
Well, fascinating is a word I use for the unexpected. Fascinating.
So improbable, we almost didn't check it.
Mr. Sulu chasing crewmen with a sword.
Put security on it.
Fascinating. A pattern is developing.
What's so fascinating?
An identification tape from our ship's library on Dr. Simon Van Gelder. Fascinating. The term is amusement park.
Of course.
An old Earth name for a place where people could go to see and do all sorts of fascinating things. Fascinating. Good. Good.
It is Landru.
Andrew. Fascinating. This is merely a hollow tube, Captain. You mean shot at it?
No, I mean shot it. With this.
Fascinating.
A good, clean shot.
Fascinating. It's made no moves against you.
No. Seems to be waiting. I tried talking to it, but didn't do any good.
Fascinating. Pure energy. Fascinating.
Look out, will you? Why don't you watch where you're going?
Coin a phrase. Fascinating.
Sir, that isn't in the Starfleet code. It's an old-style interplanetary code.
Fascinating.
Repeat what? The message I sent?
It would seem so, Captain.
What are you staring at me for?
It's unbelievable.
Fascinating.
How did I get here?
Spock.
Amazing.
Spock.
Fascinating, Captain. The knowledge. The depth.
What does it mean? We are nomad. What is it that will buy you? Power.
Fascinating.
Power, Spock! I can get that for you!
Captain, this is fascinating. Fascinating. Fascinating.
Why a cat?
Racial memories. Fascinating. A life form totally alien to our galaxy. If we could preserve and study this. Captain, I've just had a most fascinating meeting with Norman, and I'm convinced that I've discovered a very important inconsistency.
Unhappiness does not relate. We must study this.
Interesting.
Fascinating. Fascinating. Fascinating.
Hold it. Get a physiological reading on that, whatever it is.
A most fascinating thing happened. Apparently, the companion imparted to me a rather quaint, old-fashioned electric shock. Fascinating. A totally parochial attitude.
This is my chicken sandwich and coffee.
Fascinating.
I want these things off the ship. I don't care if it takes every man we've got. I want them off the ship.
Can people live that long as disassemble atoms in a transporter beam?
I have never heard of a study being done, but it would be a fascinating project.
Fascinating?
The providers gamble on the winner.
Fascinating.
But these providers haven't the courage to show themselves.
Fascinating.
This is like coming home.
Home was never like this.
I gotta make some hits. I want you to help me hit them, that's all.
Fascinating. But quite impossible.
Mr. Oxmix, my orders are quite explicit.
That was the Jailbreakers with their latest recording on Request Time, brought to you by Bang Bang, the makers of the sweetest little automatic in the world.
Fascinating.
And very simple.
Spock, you're alive.
Obviously, Captain. And I have some fascinating data on the organism.
Don't be so smart, Spock. You botched the acetylcholine test.
Perhaps the Sargon would like you to come with us.
Fascinating.
All normal, sir.
We built this chamber here in order to preserve our essence in this fashion.
Fascinating.
We knew the seed that we had planted on other planets would take root.
Fascinating. A thermonuclear warhead.
That's John Gill.
Fascinating. Fascinating. Intergalactic travel requiring only 300 years. Fascinating material. Similar to Dibernium, but considerably more dense.
The helm was left on automatic, sir.
Fascinating. Fascinating. This atmosphere is remarkably similar to your 20th century.
Spock?
Fascinating.
The Jupiter 8. Conventional internal combustion engine.
Even more fascinating. Slavery evolving into an institution with guaranteed medical payments, old age pensions. Fascinating, Doctor. This computer has a potential beyond anything you've ever done. Fascinating.
Take care of him, Doctor.
Fascinating. Activity without end, but with no volition.
Buddy, wait, you have none.
Then what am I?
You are a disembodied brain.
Fascinating. It could explain much, Doctor.
Spock, you're in a black box tied in with light rays into a complex control panel.
Fascinating. On the whole, Captain, I believe I'm quite fit. This is fascinating. A remarkable example of a retrograde civilization. A fascinating cultural development of a kind which has...
it was wrong. I shouldn't have done it.
What's that?
I should have never reconnected his mouth.
As I was saying, a fascinating cultural development of a kind which hasn't been seen in ages. These incised symbols are fascinating, evidently some form of writing.
It will depend upon my ability to achieve a true mind link with the ambassador.
I'm sure you will find it a fascinating experience.
I wear it this evening to honor you, Doctor.
Indeed.
It's very interesting. I might even say fascinating. But back to your mission.
You can't pilot a starship.
What?
Fascinating.
Range 45,000 kilometers, Captain.
Fascinating. Fascinating.
No dizziness, no sweating, no palpitations.
It doesn't work.
Indeed, fascinating.
What are we doing to each other?
Fascinating. A result of stress.
We've been under stress before. It's never set us at each other's throats.
Fascinating. During Lieutenant Johnson's emotional outburst, his expression of hatred and lust for vengeance, the alien's life energy level increased.
How about it, Spock?
Fascinating.
Explain.
There is virtually no sensor contact.
It's another Tholian, sir. Lusky must have contacted them when he tried to intercept us.
Fascinating.
Shall I lock in remaining phasic power, sir?
Negative. Fascinating. I believe we're experiencing the psychokinetic manifestations of Parman's delirium. Fascinating. Their power developed 2 or 3 months after they started eating the native foods. You seem to be moving very slowly, Doctor. Fascinating. Fascinating. Look at this stuff.
What disturbs me is why the Vions let us keep it.
Fascinating. They must have known we were capable of comprehending this control and making use of it.
I find it fascinating that with all their scientific knowledge and advances, that it was good old-fashioned human emotion that they valued the most.
Perhaps the Vulcans should hear about this. They may walk into a trap. That's right. Garth can destroy us.
Fascinating. It just disintegrated. Fascinating. Fascinating. Two irrevocably hostile humanoids.
Disgusting is what I call them.
That description is not scientifically accurate. But the inconsistencies are so compounded as to present a seemingly impossible phenomenon.
But a fascinating one, Mr. Stewart.
Precisely, Captain.
I find nothing interesting in the fact that we're about to blow up.
No. But the method is fascinating.
We will now go to the laboratory and join Dr. McCoy.
Fascinating. Only Vulcan ears would find the noise discernible.
It seems that Vulcans are fascinatingly different.
Fascinating.
I have been described in many ways, Mr. Spock, but never with that word.
Does that appear human to you, Mr. Spock?
Fascinating. For a moment, it appeared almost mineral. This is a fascinating machine. What is it?
This is the Atavachron.
Interesting nomenclature. Fascinating. Like a Vulcan marriage drum. I am experiencing audio-visual suggestion, Captain. Tonal control. Fascinating. An incredible experience, Captain. I find this scientifically fascinating.
At least I have the good sense to be scared, Jim.
Fascinating. Mechanical manifestations, of course. Fascinating. And beautiful.
An undersea civilization capable of fantastic architecture.
Fascinating. Obviously, an entire portion of the continental shelf sank within a few minutes.
The police web is off.
The fifth setting seems to be an energy absorber. Fascinating.
We can't give him that.
Fascinating. No world in the Federation has produced anything so powerful. Fascinating. Remarkable. Commander Bem is a colony creature. Fascinating, Captain. A highly advanced alien entity using this particular system as a laboratory. Fascinating. Readings indicate the vessel is composed entirely of crystalline ceramic.
Decker.
Fascinating. Not Decker unit.
Instead of a dead moon, a living, breathing planet capable of sustaining whatever life forms we see fit to deposit on it.
Fascinating.
It's snow. Snow in the same sector. Fantastic.
Fascinating.
Fascinating. If my suspicion is correct, there can be no response to this message.
When he encouraged others to follow him, he was banished from Vulcan, never to return.
Fascinating. Fascinating. Are we dreaming?
If we are, then life is a dream.
Doctor, would you care to assist me in performing surgery on a torpedo?
Fascinating.
And Captain Picard has been a role model in my quest to be more human.
More human?
Yes, Ambassador.
Fascinating. I have no regrets.
No regrets. That is a human expression.
Yes. Fascinating. The M5 itself has not behaved logically.
Please, Spock, do me a favor, and don't say it's fascinating.
No. But it is interesting.